You are listening to The Food Truck Alpha, written by Deanne Leo, narrated by Jessica Lee. This is an on-demand original story written by request for the audience of this channel. She's been hiding for 3 years, serving loaded fries from a midnight food truck. He's a billionaire CEO who calls her signature dish adequate. Their first meeting ends with her throwing him out of her truck, and his money back in his face. Their second? She's catering his charity gala when hunters attack. By their third, she'll bite him hard enough to leave a permanent mark. Meet Lotus, the last denarii wolf who can walk between souls. Meet Caspian, who just wanted decent fries at 2 a.m. and found his mate instead. And meet Bustle, a germaphobic ferret with a bow tie who's about to defeat trained killers with stolen jewelry and aggressive food safety standards. The Food Truck Alpha, where adequate becomes a love language, 43 outcasts become family, and a ferret becomes a certified food safety inspector with possibly illegal credentials. This is an original story written on demand for you, created specifically for this channel's audience, who requested found family shifter romances where forgiveness is stronger than violence. Want your story idea next? Comment below. But first, listen to the end. Trust me, you'll be ugly crying when the villain asks for loaded fries. Don't forget to like and comment. Your engagement is the only way to support the channel and keep these heartwarming stories coming your way. Now let's begin with the adequate fries that started a revolution. Chapter 1. Lotus opened the door of the food truck and inhaled the cool October air, catching hints of distant bar smoke, dying leaves, and that particular 2 a.m. smell of possibility and poor decisions. The city never quite slept, but it dozed fitfully at this hour, leaving her to feed the insomniacs and the intoxicated. She didn't have the luxury of letting her true skin show not without the suppressant. Being a lone supernatural hiding among humans wasn't something she took lightly, especially not with the local pack's tendency to patrol this neighborhood. Bustle, I swear to all that's holy, if you wash that thing one more time. 9 times is insufficient. The ferret's tiny paws scrubbed frantically at the silver moon charm with a miniature brush he'd stolen from a nail salon. Do you know how many bacteria accumulate on metal surfaces? The research is horrifying, Lotus. Horrifying. Lotus checked her phone. 2:01 a.m. Perfect. The bars would be closing soon, sending the late-night crowd searching for food, and Midnight Bites was positioned perfectly to catch them. She glanced at her pendant, currently drowning in a bowl of antibacterial solution that smelled like a hospital had thrown up. It's a suppressant pendant, not surgical equipment, Bustle. She tested the oil temperature for her signature loaded fries, the sizzle drowning out Bustle's indignant chittering. And if someone walks up while you're playing quality control inspector, I'll be in trouble. Bustle held the pendant up to the overhead light, squinting through what looked suspiciously like a jeweler's loop. No one from the pack is coming. It's Tuesday trivia night at Howler's. The whole pack's there, especially when the topic is failed boy bands of the 90s. How do you even know that? You think food inspection and cleaning is all I do here, Lotus? Bustle's whiskers twitched with offense. There's this thing called the internet. We don't have a computer here, and you don't have money for an internet cafe? Who said I paid? His tiny face scrunched into what she'd learned was his guilty but not sorry expression, one eye slightly squinted, nose wrinkled asymmetrically. The rumble of an expensive engine cut through the night, followed by a spectacular mechanical cough, a wheeze, and then silence. Lotus grabbed for the pendant. Bustle clutched it to his fuzzy chest. One more rinse. The third quadrant still has microscopic residue. Bustle. Your identity won't be exposed in 30 seconds, but gastroenteritis lasts for days. The footsteps were getting closer, heavy, measured, and decidedly male. Lotus's supernatural senses, even suppressed, picked up the particular gait of someone used to being obeyed. Great. A corporate type having car trouble. They were always the worst customers demanding modifications to every dish while checking their phones. Bustle now. The ferret performed one last theatrical rinse, dried the pendant with a microfiber cloth, cotton leaves fibers, and fastened it around her neck with the focus of a bomb technician. The silver settled against her skin just as a shadow fell across the service window. Lotus looked up and forgot, for exactly half a second, how to breathe. The man was exhausted, that was obvious, but exhaustion on him looked like a magazine spread about beautiful tragedy. Sharp cheekbones cast shadows that belonged in a noir film. His jaw could cut glass, and his mouth— She forced her eyes up to safer territory. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it, and the shadows under his eyes somehow made them more intense, not less. Her wolf, supposedly suppressed under 3 layers of silver and magic, stretched lazily in her chest like it had just noticed something interesting. No, absolutely not. The man was tall enough that he had to duck slightly to meet her eyes through the window. His suit probably cost more than her truck's monthly earnings, but it looked like he'd been wearing it for 3 days straight. "You open?" His voice carried the rasp of too many conference calls and not enough water. That's what the neon sign suggests. She gestured to the blazing open sign Bustle had insisted on installing with 16 different flash patterns. He stared at the menu board with the unfocused intensity of someone whose brain had gone into power-saving mode. "Do you have a phone I could borrow?" He held up his dead iPhone like evidence. Mine decided to give up on life about the same time as my car. "Sorry, phones aren't on the menu." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "If I order food, would you lend me one?" "That's not what I meant." She found herself almost smiling back. Almost. No landline in the truck. Health department doesn't require it, and Bustle thinks Wi-Fi causes fur loss. Bustle made an indignant squeak from wherever he was hiding. "I could lend you my cell," she offered, then wondered why. She didn't lend her phone to customers. That was asking for trouble. He contemplated this, swaying slightly on his feet. "I should order something. Just whatever. Food? Something with food in it." He paused. "And then the phone?" "He wants a whatever?" Bustle's offended whisper carried from behind the napkin dispenser. The ferret took food seriously. Whatever was practically blasphemy. "Excuse me?" The man's head tilted, eyes sharpening despite his exhaustion. Bustle ducked lower. Lotus smiled, covering smoothly. "Just the grill. Makes weird noises when it's warming up. Temperamental equipment." She was already moving, hands finding ingredients by muscle memory. "I'll make you our midnight howler-loaded fries with bourbon bacon jam, truffle aioli, aged white cheddar, crispy shallots, and fresh herbs. It's what the wolves order when they want to cry happy tears." He made a vague gesture that she interpreted as consent, then leaned against the truck's side, eyes sliding closed. Lotus moved through her routine, but kept stealing glances. Even dead on his feet, there was something about him, a coiled tension that suggested he could go from exhausted to dangerous in a heartbeat, the kind of predator that looked most harmless right before it struck. Her wolf stirred again, interested despite the suppressant. Bustle emerged from hiding to perform his usual quality check, whiskers twitching as he inspected each component. The bacon jam received a tiny paw of approval. The truffle aioli passed inspection. The aged cheddar met his standards. "Perfection," the ferret whispered, too quiet for human ears. "The ratios are sublime." She slid the container through the window. "That'll be $12. He handed her a 20 without looking, took a bite, chewed slowly, and then said the word that would haunt her for exactly 3 seconds. "Acceptable." The truck went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. "I'm sorry?" Lotus's voice could have frosted the windows. "It's adequate." He took another bite, apparently oblivious to the danger. "Acceptable. Standard. Good standard?" A pause. "For street food." Bustle made a sound like someone had stepped on his tail, which was impressive, considering no one was near his tail. His entire body went rigid, whiskers vibrating with rage. "Standard." She repeated the word like it tasted worse than spoiled milk. "For street food." "The execution is competent." He continued eating, each word another nail in his coffin. "Nothing particularly wrong with it." Bustle's tiny paws clenched into fists. His bow tie, which he'd somehow put on while she wasn't looking, spun with the force of his indignation. Lotus pulled the 20 from her register, added a 5 from her tips, and slapped both bills on the counter. "Your money, take it and go." He finally looked up, seeming to notice her for the first time. Those dark eyes focused with an intensity that made her wolf pace. "Excuse me? I don't serve adequate food to adequate customers looking for adequate experiences." She pulled the container from his hands with perhaps more force than necessary. "There's a gas station 3 blocks down. They have adequate hot dogs that have been rolling since the Clinton administration. Enjoy." "I'm eating that." "No, you were eating it. Past tense. Now you're leaving." He stared at her like she'd started speaking in tongues. "You're refusing my money?" "I'm refusing your presence. There's a difference." "Over the word adequate?" "Let me explain something." Lotus leaned through the window, close enough to catch his scent expensive cologne over something wilder, like midnight storms. "I wake up at midnight to prep. I source from local farms. I make that bacon jam from scratch with bourbon I select personally. That truffle aioli? Made with real truffles, not oil. The aged cheddar comes from a dairy where I know the cows by name." "The cows have names?" "Mabel makes excellent cheese. She's very proud." She pushed the money toward him again. "You don't have to give us a 5-star review. In fact, you don't have to say anything. But if you can't appreciate the food, then you can adequately find somewhere else to eat." He looked at the money like it was a bomb. "The gas station's that way." She pointed helpfully. "Ask for Brad. Tell him you want something adequate. He'll understand. He specializes in adequate." The man stood there for another moment, money in hand, looking between her and the retreating container of fries like he was trying to solve an equation that wouldn't balance. Then he turned and walked back toward his dead Bentley, shoulders set in a line that suggested he wasn't used to being dismissed. Lotus watched him go, then turned to find Bustle vibrating with indignation. "Adequate?" The ferret exploded from behind the napkins. "I personally tested that bacon jam. The umami levels were transcendent. The truffle ratio was calculated to the milligram. That man's palate is as dead as his car." "Bustle, you should have stopped me. It's your job to keep me grounded. We're running a food truck, not a 5-star restaurant. We have mouths to feed." "I should have bitten him. These teeth aren't just for show." He bared his tiny fangs. "Adequate. Adequate. That's what his face will be after I'm done with it. We have standards, Lotus. High standards. Midnight Howler fries are not adequate." A throat cleared outside the window. The man stood there again, his expression unreadable. "Forget something?" Lotus asked coolly. "My car's dead, my phone's dead, and you just refuse to feed me." He set a $100 bill on the counter. "I apologize. The food was exceptional. I'm just—" He ran a hand through his hair, and her wolf practically purred at the gesture. "I haven't slept in 48 hours, haven't eaten in 12, and I'm starting to hallucinate." "Hallucinate?" "I could swear I just heard someone threaten to bite me, but there's nobody here but you and—" He blinked hard, focusing on the counter where Bustle had frozen mid-rant, and what appears to be a ferret, in a bow tie, standing on its hind legs. Bustle crossed his tiny arms and glared. "Oh, that's just Bustle," Lotus said casually, as if everyone had a ferret business partner. "He handles quality control, and apparently revenge fantasies." The man stared at Bustle. Bustle stared back. Then, very deliberately, the ferret held up one paw and extended his middle claw. "Did that ferret just flip the bird at me?" He's upset about the adequate comment. He takes food criticism very personally. The ferret. Yes. Takes food criticism personally. Very. The man looked between them several times, clearly trying to process this information through his exhaustion-addled brain. Finally, he seemed to make a decision, probably that he was too tired to question reality. "I apologize," he said, directing this at Bustle. "The food is exceptional. I'm just too exhausted to have a functioning vocabulary." Bustle's whiskers twitched, considering. Then he gave a regal nod of acceptance, though his tail still swished with residual irritation. Lotus studied the man for a long moment, The exhaustion was real, the apology seemed genuine, and the $100 bill suggested actual remorse. Fine. She pulled out fresh ingredients. But if you use any more offensive commentary, Bustle gets to bite you. He nodded. Deal. Then to Bustle. Fair warning, though, I've had all my shots. Bustle chittered something that sounded suspiciously like, we'll see about that. She remade the dish, adding extra bacon jam partly as forgiveness, mostly as emphasis. When she handed it through the window, he took a bite and closed his eyes. This is... He paused, visibly searching for words. Incredible. Amazing. The opposite of adequate. Better. She made change for the 100. Keep the adjectives coming, and I might tell you about tomorrow's special. There's a tomorrow special? Not for adequate customers. He actually smiled then, just a small quirk of his lips, but it transformed his face from corporate exhaustion to something almost human, something that made her wolf sit up and pay attention. She pulled out her phone, unlocking it before handing it over. As promised, one phone call. His fingers brushed hers as he took it, and she definitely didn't notice how warm his hands were. Thank you. He dialed, then spoke in a different voice, crisp, authoritative. It's Caspian Blake. The Bentley died on 5th and Montgomery. Yes, that 5th. The one with the food trucks. No, I'm fine. Just send someone. Caspian Blake. The name tickled something in her memory. Where had she heard it? Behind the napkins, Bustle muttered, Still should have bitten him. He returned her cell phone. Thank you. You're welcome, Caspian. Their fingers brush, gentle, brief, but enough to make her wolf sitting upright and maybe purring. Cass, please. And your name? Lotus, just Lotus. She smiled at him, a gesture she had practiced for years to mentally calm her wolf. It's nice to meet you, Lotus. I'll be back for other special dishes. As Cass, she liked the way the name felt in her thoughts, which was problematic, walked back to his car, presumably to wait for whatever rescue service billionaires used. Lotus touched her pendant. Still secure, still suppressing what she really was. But for just a moment, when he'd smiled, she'd felt something else. A flutter of recognition her wolf side shouldn't have been able to feel through the suppressant. Problem? Bustle asked, emerging now that the danger had passed. No, she lied, watching Caspian settle against his car with her loaded fries, her midnight howler fries eating with genuine appreciation now. No problem at all. Bustle studied her with those two intelligent ferret eyes. Your heart rate increased by 12%. Food critic proximity syndrome, very common. That's not a real thing, says the ferret with a jeweler's loop. In the distance, a howl echoed across the city, then another, then silence. A howl split the air. Her fingers itched to grab her phone and search his name, to figure out who Caspian Blake was and why his presence made her wolf pace like a caged thing. But she forced her hands to keep working, to maintain the facade of normal human food truck owner who definitely didn't hear supernatural howls in the night. Caspian turned toward the sound, and in profile, she could see his jaw clench, muscles tensing like he was fighting something. The howl came again, and this time her wolf didn't just stir. It surged against the suppressant, recognizing something in that sound, wanting to answer. A sharp crack made her gasp. She looked down. A hairline fracture ran across the silver moon pendant, so fine it was barely visible, but she felt it. Felt the suppressant's hold weaken just a fraction, felt her wolf push against the crack like water finding a weakness in a dam. Chapter 2. The phone's shrill ring punched through Lotus's dream about drowning in truffle oil, while Bustle critiqued her swimming technique with flashcards. She fumbled for the device, knocking over a glass of water that cascaded onto her bedroom floor with a splash that would definitely stain the already questionable carpet. What? Her voice scraped like sandpaper on concrete. Lotus. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Helen's panic vibrated through the speaker at a frequency that could shatter glass. Lotus squinted at her phone. 5:47 p.m. For normal humans, evening. For someone who ran a midnight food truck, this was essentially 3 a.m. Helen, breathe. Use your lungs for their intended purpose. The chef? He's gone. Vanished. Poof, like my career prospects. Helen's words tumbled over each other like lemmings off a cliff. 200 guests arriving in 6 hours for the Aurora Foundation launch, and I have a kitchen full of ingredients and no one who knows what to do with them. Lotus sat up, her neck cracking in 3 places. What chef? What foundation? The celebrity chef my boss hired for tonight's midnight gala midnight, because apparently rich people think eating at normal hours is pedestrian, and he's nowhere. His phone's off, his sous chef says he flew to Cabo with someone's wife, not sure whose, and I'm going to be unemployed by dawn. Helen, I run a food truck, a truck with wheels, that serves drunk people cheese-covered things. The prep's all done, everything's organized. I just need someone to manage the kitchen and make sure food comes out looking expensive. Helen's breathing hitched. And you could add your signature dish for the executive table 12 people who decide if I keep my health insurance. Bustle's head popped up from his nest of stolen restaurant napkins, whiskers twitching with interest. Please, Helen's voice cracked. It's Blake Industries, the new CEO's been working on this Aurora Foundation for months. The pendant against Lotus's chest turned ice cold. Blake Industries? The name tasted like 3-day-old adequate in her mouth. Caspian Blake's company. You know, young CEO took over from his father, supposedly gorgeous, but I wouldn't know because I've been staring at spreadsheets since... Lotus was already out of bed, muscle memory carrying her to the closet while her brain processed this cosmic joke. The Bentley driving, adequate spouting Caspian Blake? You know him? We've met. She yanked on black pants that looked professional enough. Which hotel? The Vermilion. The kitchen entrance is on... I know where it is. Everyone in food service knew the Vermilion's kitchen. It was the kind of place where even the dishwashers had certificates. I'll be there in 30. 28 minutes later, Lotus stood in the Vermilion's service entrance, Bustle hidden in her jacket pocket, staring at chaos that would make a tornado feel inadequate. The kitchen looked like someone had explained organization to it once, badly in a foreign language. Prep cooks stood in clusters like lost sheep. Ingredients covered every surface in no discernible pattern. A sous chef was having what appeared to be a quiet, nervous breakdown next to the walk-in freezer. Lotus! Helen materialized like an anxiety-powered teleportation. Her usually perfect auburn hair looked like she'd been using it to clean the ceiling fans. Thank God you're here. The chef left notes, but they're in French and possibly encrypted, and I think one might be a love poem. Lotus surveyed the disaster. Her wolf, still pressing against that hairline crack in the pendant, wanted to establish dominance through volume. But she'd learned long ago that kitchens responded better to controlled authority than alpha posturing. She clapped once. The sharp sound cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone stops, now. 20 pairs of eyes turned to her. You. She pointed to the sous chef mid-breakdown. What's your name? Timothy. Timothy's now on sauces. You know sauces? He nodded rapidly. Excellent. You two, she indicated the tallest prep cooks, are on proteins. Everything gets a temp check. Overcooked protein at a Blake Industries event is a firing offense, and I mean that literally. She pulled Bustle from her pocket and set him on the counter. This is Bustle. He's our quality control specialist. The kitchen staff stared at the ferret in his tiny bow tie. Bustle stood on his hind legs, placed one paw over his heart, and performed an elaborate bow that somehow conveyed both professionalism and mild disdain for their previous chaos. A ferret in a bow tie, Timothy whispered. Bustle's whiskers twitched indignantly. He marched over to the sauce station and pointed imperiously at Timothy's bechamel. May I taste test? Everyone gasped in unison. Timothy stuttered. He just... English, yes. Speaking, also yes. Now can we stop gawking and start working? Bustle tapped his tiny foot impatiently. The sauce, if you please. Oh, yes, of course. Timothy spooned a sample onto a small plate with shaking hands. Bustle dipped a claw in the bechamel, tasted it with the concentration of a sommelier, then made a dramatic gagging motion. Salt. It needs salt. Also, you're whisking in circles when you should be using a figure-8 pattern. The molecular structure demands it. Timothy tasted it. Oh my God, he's right. Bustle preened. Of course I'm right. I have 17 certifications in food safety and flavor profiles. He paused. They're self-awarded, but still valid. The next 4 hours descended into controlled insanity. Bustle had appointed himself kitchen overlord, scurrying between stations with the intensity of a tiny military commander. At the vegetable station, he discovered carrots cut at inconsistent angles and proceeded to demonstrate proper knife technique using a pencil and what appeared to be advanced geometry. Is he showing us the Pythagorean theorem? Asked a prep cook. Obviously, Bustle replied. Consistent 45-degree angles create optimal surface area for caramelization. This is basic culinary physics. At the dessert station, he found a pastry chef about to add vanilla extract to chocolate mousse. Bustle threw himself dramatically between the chef and the bowl, clutching his chest like he'd been shot, then fell dead on the counter. What's wrong? The chef panicked. Bustle resurrected himself with a gasp. Vanilla in chocolate mousse is a crime against dessert. Cocoa only. The flavor profiles are mortal enemies. But the real performance began when Lotus started her signature loaded fries for the executive table. This needs to be special, she announced, commandeering an entire station. Timothy, I need aged white cheddar, and I mean aged like it has stories to tell and regrets to forget. Bustle immediately began what looked like a cheese-aging timeline through interpretive dance, complete with him slowly hunching over to indicate the passage of time. Minimum 18 months, he called out. 24 if you want tears of joy. For the bourbon bacon jam, Lotus continued, pulling out bacon that made the prep cooks stop and stare. We're using heritage breed pork belly, double smoked with applewood and cherry. She began reducing the bourbon, and the smell made 2 line cooks actually whimper. Bustle stood guard over the pan, wielding a tiny whisk like a sword. Back, you flavor thieves. No one touches the jam until molecular bonding is complete. The truffle aioli needs real truffles, Lotus announced. And I'm adding something special, a honey saffron drizzle that'll make these fries unmistakable. Bustle's eyes widened. The golden trifecta. She's doing the golden trifecta. He began what seemed to be a coronation ceremony for himself as king of flavor country. The saffron-infused honey gleamed like liquid gold. She'd added just a touch of smoked paprika and black garlic to the aioli, creating layers of umami that could make a food critic weep. The fries themselves were cut from purple potatoes and traditional russets, creating a visual that looked like edible modern art. Is he conducting? Timothy asked. Bustle was indeed standing on his hind legs, using 2 tiny spoons to conduct the kitchen like they were the London Symphony Orchestra. He pointed at the grill station, they flipped the proteins. He gestured at sauces, they whisked faster. He dramatically swept toward plating garnishes appeared. Table 12 is being seated. Helen appeared, clutching her tablet like a life preserver. That's the executive table. Mr. Blake and the board members. Lotus began plating her signature fries. Each portion was architecturally precise, fries arranged in a crosshatch pattern, the purple and gold creating a checkerboard effect. The bourbon bacon jam formed glossy pools of mahogany. The truffle aioli was piped in perfect dots. The honey saffron drizzle created abstract art across the plate, and she finished with microgreens and edible flowers that made each dish look like expensive jewelry you could eat. Bustle inspected each plate with a jeweler's loupe he'd somehow acquired, giving tiny salutes of approval. The plates went out. Lotus watched through the kitchen's porthole window as servers glided toward the executive table. She could see Caspian in profile sharp jaw, exhaustion replaced by something that looked almost like enjoyment as he laughed at something a board member said. Then she noticed them. 3 servers who moved differently from the others. Their paths were too deliberate, their eyes scanning in patterns that had nothing to do with customer service. One had a bulge under his jacket that wasn't an order pad. "That's not good," she muttered. Bustle tugged at her sleeve urgently. Whatever you're thinking of doing, bad idea, Lotus. Very bad idea. Catastrophically bad. The kind of bad that ends with obituaries. I'm just going to check. Bustle grabbed her leg, wrapping all 4 paws around her ankle. No, we don't check. We cook, we clean, we survive. That's the arrangement. One of the suspicious servers moved toward the kitchen's back entrance. Not the service entrance, the delivery door that led to the alley. Against every instinct, against Bustle now literally climbing up her leg while hissing protests, Lotus followed. The kitchen was too busy to notice her slip out. The alley was dark, lit only by a flickering security light that made shadows jump like living things. The server stood at the far end, speaking into what definitely wasn't a phone. In position, targets at the executive table, clear sight lines from 3 angles. Bustle bit her ankle. Not hard, but enough to communicate that this was the stupidest thing she'd done since agreeing to cater for the man who'd called her food adequate. The pendant against her chest hummed, the crack spreading another millimeter as her wolf stirred, scenting danger that had nothing to do with food service. The server turned, and for a moment she saw his face clearly. The scar across his left eye was distinctive, the kind of mark left by claws, not knives. She knew that scar. She'd seen it before, years ago, in a different city when she still ran with her pack. Before she'd learned that some hunters didn't just hunt wolves. They hunted anyone who helped them. The kitchen door behind her creaked. Bustle yanked her sleeve with surprising strength, pulling her back inside before the scarred man could fully turn. They pressed against the wall, hearts pounding well, her heart pounding, Bustle vibrating with what looked like barely contained panic. Once safely back in the kitchen's chaos, Bustle dragged her to a supply closet. The moment the door closed, he exploded. "Are you completely insane?" His tiny voice cracked with fury. "That's Marcus Thorne, the scarred hunter. He's killed more wolves than you've served fries." "You know him?" "Every supernatural creature with half a brain cell knows him, and you just followed him into a dark alley like you're auditioning for the role of first victim in a horror movie." Bustle paced the small space, his bow tie completely askew now. The crack in her pendant spread like spider silk, and her wolf whispered a truth she didn't want to hear. The words escaped before she could stop them. "Made in danger." "What?" Bustle's voice hit a pitch only dogs should hear. Her heart skipped several beats. "My wolf. It recognizes my mate." "The hunter?" Bustle looked ready to faint. "You're mated to Marcus Thorne?" "No!" She touched the pendant with trembling fingers. "It's Caspian Blake." Bustle stared at her for 3 full seconds, processing. "The adequate fries guy? The one who insulted our midnight howler? That's your mate?" He grabbed his bow tie like he might strangle himself with it. "Oh no, no. This is going to be a catastrophically bad night." "Bustle. Your mate Bond recognized him through a suppressant? Do you know how strong that connection has to be?" His whiskers twitched frantically. "This is pack politics, Lotus. The kind that ends with bodies in dumpsters and news headlines nobody wants to read. We serve food. We clean surfaces. We do not get involved in whatever territorial dispute is about to turn that ballroom into a supernatural massacre." Through the door, she could hear the kitchen returning to its rhythm, unaware that 3 hunters were circling her mate like sharks. And despite Bustle's warning, despite every survival instinct she'd cultivated over years of hiding, Lotus knew she couldn't just walk away. Not from him. Not from her mate. Chapter 3. The executive table gleamed with enough silverware to arm a small militia. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light, throwing rainbow fragments across white linen that probably cost more than most people's rent. Caspian surveyed the carefully curated faces around him, board members, investors, politicians, all wearing the same practiced smiles that meant they wanted something. The air hung thick with competing perfumes and cologne, undercut by the subtle musk of ambition and barely concealed agendas. Senator Williams's empty chair gaped like a missing tooth in an otherwise perfect smile. Then the fries arrived like a memory he didn't know he'd been searching for. Caspian stared at the architectural precision of purple and gold potatoes, the mahogany pools of what could only be bourbon bacon jam, the dots of truffle aioli placed with surgical precision. But it was the golden drizzle honey with something else, saffron, that filled his nostrils with warmth and exotic promise, that confirmed what his senses already knew. The food truck woman, Lotus. He took a bite, and his wolf surged against his control with a force that made him grip the edge of the table. The flavors exploded across his palate, smoky bacon that tasted of applewood and secrets, sweet honey that carried hints of wildflower meadows, truffle so earthy it was almost primal, with that distinctive saffron note that had haunted him for 3 days. His wolf hadn't reacted like this in years, not since his father had taught him to keep it leashed, controlled, hidden behind corporate suits and board meetings. "Exceptional choice for the foundation launch," board member Harrison said, attacking his own portion with enthusiasm. "Where did you find this, chef?" "Helen arranged it." The words came out steady, professional, while his wolf paced and turned, desperate to find the source of that scent that lingered on the plate midnight air and something wild barely contained. His eyes found Helen in the corner, tablet clutched to her chest, watching the service with the intensity of someone whose job depended on perfection. Which it probably did. He started to rise, needing to know how Lotus had ended up in his kitchen, when something small and furry in a bow tie streaked across the floor toward Helen's leg. "Caspian." Margaret Chen, the foundation's primary investor, touched his arm. "We need you to give the speech. Senator Williams had to leave something about a situation at home." "Williams was supposed to—" "You're the CEO. The foundation was your father's vision, now yours." Her smile held the kind of steel that had built empires. "The donors need to hear from you." He watched the ferret because it was definitely a ferret climb Helen's leg, while she tried desperately to look professional. The tiny creature appeared to be gesticulating wildly about something. "Of course." He stood, his wolf still restless, and made his way to the stage. The spotlight hit him like an interrogation, hot enough to make sweat prickle along his collar. The microphone feedback squealed once before settling into an expectant hum. The ballroom's acoustics carried every cough, every shifted chair, every whispered comment about his father's legacy. "The Aurora Foundation isn't about charity." His voice carried across the ballroom, and 200 faces turned toward him. "It's about recognizing that sometimes the strongest among us are those who've been cast aside." Movement in his peripheral vision, the kitchen door opened, and his wolf went completely still. "My father believed that every creature deserves a pack, a place where they belong." The words continued on autopilot, while his attention locked onto the figure emerging from the kitchen. Too many young wolves. He caught himself smoothly pivoting. Too many young people age out of foster care with nowhere to go, no family, no pack to run with. She wore a midnight blue dress that belonged to Helen. He recognized the conservative cut from earlier, but on her it transformed into something dangerous. The silk clung to curves that her chef's jacket had hidden, flowing like water when she moved. A silver mask covered the upper half of her face, leaving her lips exposed. Lips he remembered pressed into a thin line when she'd called him adequate. But he knew her. The way she moved controlled power in every step like a predator pretending to be prey. The way her head tilted when she surveyed the room, cataloging threats and exits with the same precision she'd used to arrange those fries. Her hair, freed from its food service ponytail, fell in waves that caught the light like spun chocolate. The Aurora Foundation will provide housing, education, and most importantly, family for those who've been told they don't belong anywhere. His voice strengthened as she moved along the wall, trying to blend with the shadows, because everyone deserves to know what home feels like. Applause erupted. He descended from the stage, ignoring the board members trying to catch his attention, ignoring everything except the woman in the borrowed dress who was definitely trying to disappear into the crowd. "Dance floor is now open," the band leader announced, and music flowed through the space. Caspian crossed the ballroom with the single-minded focus of a wolf who'd caught a scent. People parted without conscious thought, responding to something primal in his movement. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that her scent wild mint and midnight storms beneath Helen's borrowed perfume made his wolf throw itself against his control, close enough to see her pulse flutter at the base of her throat, just above where that silver pendant rested against skin that looked like cream in the soft lighting. "Dance with me." Not a question. He extended his hand, palm up, fingers steady despite the electricity running through his veins. His wolf pressed forward, drawn to something in her that sang to every instinct he'd spent years suppressing. Through the mask, her eyes widened, not fear, but recognition of what stood before her. She could feel it too, the suppressant silver at her throat, no match for whatever pulled between them. "You cooked for my foundation launch. The least I can do is offer you a dance." He held out his hand, and the entire room seemed to pause, watching. She looked at his hand like it might bite. Then, with a resignation that almost made him smile, she placed her fingers in his. The touch sent electricity up his arm. His wolf pressed forward, recognizing something in her that it desperately wanted to claim. He pulled her onto the dance floor as the band shifted into something slow and elegant. She moved stiffly at first, not uncomfortable but uncertain, like someone who'd learned to dance from books rather than ballrooms. He adjusted his hold, guiding her with subtle pressure, making the steps smaller, easier to follow. His hand at her waist felt the tension in her muscles gradually ease as he led her through a simple box step, then into a gentle turn that made her dress bell out like midnight water. "You're wearing Helen's dress." He spun her into the proper position, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. "I needed to talk to you. You'd prefer I came out in chef's whites?" They moved together, and he noticed how she held herself not like someone uncomfortable with dancing, but like someone ready to run or fight. The pendant at her throat caught the light, and his wolf recoiled slightly. Silver, but more than that, suppressant silver, the kind wolves used when they needed to hide. More dancers joined them on the floor, and the attention gradually shifted away. Lotus leaned closer, and her whispered words confirmed what his instincts already knew. "You're in danger. There are at least 3 hunters are here, probably more." "You noticed them too?" Her head snapped up, eyes meeting his through the mask. "You knew?" "My wolf's been agitated since they arrived." But she didn't look surprised. Instead, her fingers tightened on his shoulder, northwest corner behind the ice sculpture, southeast by the emergency exit, and one circulating with the servers. He spun her, using the movement to check her positions. She was right. "How did you know?" "I followed them into the alley. Heard them talking. They called you the Alpha's son." His blood chilled. "You followed the hunters? Do you know how dangerous that was?" "Hey, I'm here warning you about them." "I can handle myself, Lotus." "Is that right? When you were on that stage, one poisonous dart and you'd be done, Alpha's son." "I can handle myself and manage my event, Ms. Lotus. This is pack business. And since you're hiding your identity," he gestured subtly at her pendant, "I don't think you're in a position to fight with the packs." "I'm here to help." "I heard you, but the last thing I need is to worry about protecting someone who shouldn't be involved, a chef who brings a ferret in a bow tie to my kitchen. I'm not some civilian, not a damsel in distress." "I didn't say you were a damsel in distress, but you're either pack or human civilian. At the moment, you're choosing to be the latter." She bit off whatever she was going to say. "Never mind." She glanced over his shoulder. "They're moving, closing positions." He could feel it too, the subtle shift in the room's energy as predators position themselves around their prey. His wolf wanted to shift, to fight, to protect. But 200 humans filled the ballroom, and his father's voice echoed in his memory. "Control. Always control. Never let them see what you really are. When I spin you again," he murmured against her ear, "head for the kitchen. Take Helen." "I'm not leaving." "Please." The word came out rougher than intended. "I can't protect you and deal with them." She pulled back enough to look at him, and even through the mask, he could see the incredulity in her expression. "You think I need protecting?" A champagne flute shattered across the room, the sound sharp, wrong, deliberate, The hunters moved as one, and Caspian realized with perfect clarity that his father's vision of control was about to collide with a very different reality. The ballroom erupted into chaos, and his carefully controlled wolf decided that adequate was no longer an acceptable way to handle anything. Chapter 4. The champagne flute shattered, and Lotus knew with bone-deep certainty that her quiet life of midnight food service had just exploded into glittering shards. The hunters moved like a coordinated pack, which was ironic considering. The scarred one she'd seen in the alley launched himself from behind the ice sculpture, something metallic glinting in his hand. Two others emerged from the service stations, their server uniforms discarded to reveal tactical gear that definitely wasn't standard catering attire. "Everyone down!" Caspian's voice carried alpha command that made even the humans drop instinctively. Except Lotus. The command rolled off her like water off a duck's back, which made him look at her sharply even as he moved to intercept the first hunter. Their eyes met across the chaos for one electric second, and she saw the moment he understood. She wasn't human, wasn't weak, wasn't someone who would obey. The scarred hunter Marcus Thorne, Bustle had called him, smiled as he pulled a blade that gleamed wrong, the metal etched with symbols that made her wolf recoil, wolfsbane laced silver, the kind that burned going in and poisoned what it couldn't cut. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced with theatrical calm, "we're here for Caspian Blake. If you don't want to be casualties, you can leave. Orderly. Now." Screaming erupted. 200 guests in designer clothing tried to fit through 3 exits simultaneously. Chairs toppled. Someone's Louboutin went flying past Lotus's head. The stampede of panicking humans created a wall of bodies, blocking Caspian's security team from entering. Caspian moved fast, controlled, keeping his human form but with reflexes that screamed supernatural. He caught Marcus's wrist, redirected the blade into a decorative plant that immediately started wilting from the wolfsbane, leaves turning black and curling like dying spiders. "Lotus, get Helen and go!" He didn't look at her, too focused on the 3 hunters now circling him like hyenas. "I really hate it when men tell me what to do," she muttered, then grabbed a silver serving tray that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The second hunter came at her, probably thinking she was just another panicked guest in a borrowed dress. She introduced his face to the sterling silver with enough force to leave a perfect oval impression in the metal. The sound rang out like a gong. He staggered back, nose fountaining blood that splattered across the white tablecloth like abstract art. "Bill me," she growled, then felt it, the pendant cracking further, spiderwebbing across the surface as her wolf pushed through, demanding freedom. A hunter grabbed Helen, using her as a human shield as he advanced on Caspian. Helen's scream cut through the chaos, high and terrified and wrong. That did it. Lotus ripped the pendant off, the chain snapping like tissue paper. The sensation hit her like diving into Arctic water after being wrapped in electric blankets for years. Her wolf surged forward, not shifting. She couldn't, not with humans everywhere, but flooding her system with strength and speed she'd been suppressing for so long, she'd forgotten what it felt like to be whole. The world sharpened into hyperfocus. She could smell the wolfsbane on 12 different blades, the fierce sweat of humans, the rage rolling off Caspian in waves like heat from a forge. But underneath it all, cutting through everything else like a beacon in the dark, Namai, his scent. Midnight storms and something uniquely him that made her wolf sing with recognition. The mate bond slammed into place with the force of a freight train, stealing her breath, making her heart skip and race and nearly stop all at once. Across the room, Caspian's head snapped toward her like he'd been shot. His eyes went wide, gold bleeding into the brown as his wolf recognized what hers already knew. Mate. The word echoed between them, unspoken but heard, a truth that rewrote everything. She moved. The serving tray became a discus, sailing through the air with supernatural accuracy to strike the hunter holding Helen in the temple. He dropped like his strings had been cut, unconscious before he hit the floor. Helen scrambled away on her hands and knees, her tablet screen spiderwebbed with cracks. "Behind you!" Caspian shouted, and the concern in his voice, not for a stranger, not for a chef, but for his mate, made her wolf preen even as she moved. Lotus dropped into a crouch, swept the legs of the hunter behind her, then drove her elbow into his solar plexus as he fell. The satisfying wheeze he made almost made up for her blown cover. Almost. Marcus laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Well, well, the alpha's son found his mate. How precious. He pulled 2 more blades, spinning them with practiced ease. And she's been hiding under suppressants. Breaking pack law, are we? Naughty. Naughty. I'm nobody's property, Lotus snarled, grabbing a champagne bottle by the neck. I'm just the chef. She smashed the bottom against a table edge, creating a jagged weapon that would have made her health inspector weep. That's Dom Perignon! Bustle's anguished cry came from his hiding spot. 2008 vintage! That's a mortgage payment. More hunters poured in through the service entrance 6, 8, 10. Too many. Even with Caspian fighting like a man possessed, and the way he kept positioning himself between her and the worst threats told her his wolf had fully recognized the bond they were outnumbered in a room full of fragile humans. Marcus grinned, sensing victory. Your father thought he could integrate our kinds, boy. Look how that turned out for him. Caspian's control slipped just for a second, his eyes going full gold. Don't talk about my father. Oh, did I hit a nerve? Did Daddy not tell you about the hunters he created? The wolves he turned into weapons against their own kind? 3 hunters rushed Caspian at once. He fought them off, but she could see him pulling his punches, trying not to reveal his full strength, with humans still scrambling for exits. A blade whistled past Lotus's ear, close enough to cut a few strands of hair. She spun, caught the hunter's wrist, and heard the satisfying crack of bones breaking. But 2 more took his place, backing her toward the wall. This was bad. This was very, very bad. Then Bustle appeared on the chandelier. Nobody knew how he'd gotten up there. One moment the ferret was hiding under tables, the next he was 30 feet up, standing on crystal drops like some kind of tiny avenging angel in a bow tie. Attention! His voice carried with surprising authority. Your hygiene standards are appalling. Every hunter looked up, momentarily confused. Bustle began pelting them with whatever he'd been hoarding in his bow tie, which turned out to be an impressive collection of shiny objects he'd stolen throughout the night. Cufflinks, earrings, someone's Rolex, what looked like the ambassador's monocle, and... Is that my grandmother's brooch? Margaret Chen gasped from behind an overturned table. A particularly heavy platinum wedding band caught Marcus in the eye. He cursed, stumbling backward directly into Caspian's fist. Death from above! Bustle shrieked, now swinging from the chandelier like a fuzzy Tarzan. You want some of this? I'm professionally trained in food safety. I know 17 ways to kill bacteria, and you're all contaminated. The absurdity of it created just enough chaos. Lotus grabbed a hunter in a chokehold while he was distracted by the ferret's aerial assault. Caspian threw another through the chocolate fountain, which had somehow survived until now, creating a chocolate-covered villain who slipped on his own sweetened mess. But then a blade found its mark. Helen screamed, not fear this time, but pain. Blood bloomed across her shirt like a spreading rose, the white fabric turning crimson. The wolfsbane lace silver had caught her side. Helen! Lotus abandoned her hunter, rushing to her friend. The scent of Helen's blood, human, innocent, spilled because of their world triggered something primal in both Lotus and Caspian. They moved in perfect synchronization, their mate bond singing between them. Lotus caught Helen as she fell, while Caspian became a whirlwind of controlled violence, driving the hunters back with a fury that made even Marcus step away. Outside, sirens wailed, human police getting closer. Marcus heard them, too. With military precision, the hunters began their retreat, melting into the shadows like the predators they were. Helen needs an ambulance. Lotus pressed her hands against the wound, feeling the edges already starting to burn from the wolfsbane traces. Now! Caspian was already there, kneeling beside them, his hand covering hers on Helen's wound. The touch sent electricity through her entire body, their wolves recognizing each other through skin and blood and desperation. The wolfsbane is diluted on the blade, meant for us, not humans. She'll be okay. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wild when they met hers. You're my mate. It wasn't a question. I know, she breathed. My wolf knew the moment the pendant broke. Mine knew the moment you threw that tray. A ghost of a smile touched his lips despite the chaos. Maybe even before. Maybe from that first night with the adequate fries. Bustle rappelled down from the chandelier, using what appeared to be a string of connected napkin rings. He landed on Lotus's shoulder, bow tie completely sideways, tiny chest heaving. This touching moment is beautiful, really, but we need to go, the ferret wheezed. Now, before the authorities arrive and start asking how she fought off 12 armed men with kitchen supplies. Sirens wailed louder, maybe a block away now. Go, Caspian said. You're exposed. Whoever you're hiding from, they all know where you are now. I can't leave you. I'll handle this. I'll make sure Helen's okay. His hand found her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with a tenderness that seemed impossible given the violence of moments before. But I need you safe. I'm your mate, she said. I don't run. And I'm yours, he replied, which means I protect you even from your own stubbornness. Without warning, fast as lightning, he leaned forward and bit her neck, not hard enough to break skin, but enough to leave a mark. The claiming bite. Temporary without the full ritual, but undeniable. The sensation shot through her like wildfire, her wolf howling in recognition and frustration. Claiming should be mutual, should be complete, she slapped a hand over the mark, glaring at him. Really? Now, in the middle of a crime scene? How romantic. I'm nothing if not efficient, but his eyes were serious. Now any wolf who sees you will know you're under Blake protection, that you have an alpha who will hunt anyone who touches you. Possessive much? Completely. No apology in his tone. Go, Lotus, I'll find you. Mates always find each other. She wanted to argue, wanted to claim him back, wanted to do 1,000 things that weren't possible with police sirens screaming closer. But Helen's blood was warm under her hands, and Bustle was right. Questions would be asked that she couldn't answer. If Helen loses a single hair because of this, mate bond or not, you'll be in trouble with me. Understood. He squeezed her hand one last time. Go. She ran. Through the kitchen, past Timothy still clutching a ladle like a weapon, out into the alley where this whole mess had started. Bustle clung to her shoulder, muttering a stream of complaints that grew more creative with each step. 3 years! 3 years of building our reputation, our food truck dreams, our Michelin star aspirations. Food trucks don't get Michelin stars, Bustle. They could have. We could have been the first. But no, you had to go and save people. You had to be heroic. You couldn't just let the handsome CEO get lightly stabbed. He paused. Although finding your mate is significant. Statistically improbable, actually. Do you know the odds of mate bonds manifesting in the modern era? Bustle. 1 in 12,000. And you found yours over loaded fries. That's either destiny or the universe's terrible sense of humor. Behind them, the hotel blazed with red and blue lights. Somewhere in that chaos, her mate was spinning stories to protect them all. Her neck throbbed where he'd bitten her, and her wolf purred at the sensation. She was marked. She was mated. She was exposed to her enemies. Chapter 5. Lotus took the stairs to her apartment 3 at a time, Bustle clinging to her shoulder like a furry backpack with anxiety issues. Slow down, he squeaked. I'm getting motion sickness. Ferrets weren't designed for parkour. We have 10 minutes, maybe less, Lotus said, shouldering open her apartment door. The familiar smell of lavender cleaning products, Bustle's doing, mixed with the lingering scent of last night's experimental curry. They'll track my scent here. She grabbed the go bag from under her bed, the one she'd packed 3 years ago and hoped never to use. Clothes, cash, fake IDs that probably wouldn't fool anyone supernatural but might buy time with humans. We can't just leave, Bustle protested, jumping onto her dresser. What about the sanctuary? She paused for a second. The sanctuary, that abandoned subway station, turned underground haven where 43 souls depended on her food truck money to survive. I know, Lotus said, shoving weapons into the bag: silver knives for wolves, iron for Fae, and one very illegal taser she'd bought from a guy who might have been a gremlin. But if I go there now, I'm leading the hunters straight to them. So you're just going to abandon them? Bustle's whiskers twitched with indignation. Mrs. Iris with her arthritis? Little Jasmine who just learned to control his shift? The Violet family who lost everything when their pack cast them out? Everyone in Sanctuary had abandoned their identity and adopted a flower name to survive, to build a new life, and to hopefully thrive. Don't! Lotus's voice cracked. You think I don't know? That money keeps the lights on, keeps the medical supplies stocked, keeps the ward stones that hide them from hunters powered. She moved to the kitchen, grabbing the coffee can full of cash from behind the cereal. $4,000. It would keep the sanctuary running for maybe 2 weeks. This is why I told you not to get involved, Bustle muttered, his tail swishing anxiously. But no, you had to save people. You had to be noble. You had to find your mate in the middle of a hunter attack. That wasn't exactly planned. Nothing with you is planned. It's all instinct and heroics and, oh look, someone needs help. Bustle threw his tiny paws in the air. Do you know what is planned? My cleaning schedule, which is now completely ruined. Despite everything, Lotus almost smiled. Your cleaning schedule is ruined? That's your concern right now? Routine is important for mental health, Bustle insisted. And speaking of health, what about Rose's medicine? She needs those wolf-strength antibiotics every week. Or old Sage, wheels his chair, needs those specific replacement parts only you know how to source. Lotus sank onto her bed, the weight of responsibility crushing her chest. If I stay, they die. If I go, they slowly starve. Great options. Bustle scurried over, climbing up to sit on her knee. Or, he said slowly, option 3. Which is? You go to them, to the sanctuary. I just said... You said you'd bring danger. But Lotus, have you considered that maybe, just maybe, 43 grateful werewolves might actually want to protect the person who's been protecting them? Lotus stared at him. They're not fighters. They're hunteds, outcasts, the broken ones who survived, Bustle interrupted. Every single one of them survived something that should have killed them. That's not weakness, that's strength. He adjusted his bow tie, which had somehow stayed attached through everything. Plus, I could cook for everyone. I've been dying to try that industrial kitchen you had installed. You can't reach the stove. I have step stools strategically hidden throughout the sanctuary. I'm not an amateur. A sound from outside made them both freeze engines, multiple vehicles moving fast. They're here, Lotus breathed, grabbing her bag. Window, Bustle suggested. Fire escape, she corrected, already moving. But when she looked out, 3 men in tactical gear were already climbing up. Scratch that. Front door? They crept to the peephole. The hallway was full of hunters, moving in practice formation. We're trapped, Bustle whispered. This is it. We're going to die. I never got to achieve my dream of opening a ferret-run restaurant. We're not dying, Lotus said, though her heart was pounding so hard she was sure the hunters could hear it. And your restaurant idea is terrible. The health department would have questions. My hygiene standards exceed FDA requirements. A crash from the floor below. They were searching apartments. Roof, Lotus decided. Then we jumped to the next building. Jump? Bustle's voice went up 3 octaves. I'm a ferret, not a flying squirrel. I don't have wing flaps. I'll carry you. Oh, well, that's reassuring. The woman who dropped her phone in soup last week is going to carry me across a deadly gap. They made it to the roof access door just as her apartment door exploded inward. Lotus didn't look back, racing up the stairs as shouts erupted behind them. The night air hit like a slap, cold and sharp with the promise of rain. The next building's roof was 15 feet away, doable for a wolf, even in human form. Don't look down, she told Bustle, tucking him inside her jacket. Don't look down. Don't look. We're 6 stories up. She backed up for a running start, then stopped. 3 figures stood on the opposite roof, waiting. "Clever little wolf," Marcus Thorne called across the gap, but not clever enough. Hunters emerged from the roof access behind her, trapped, again. "Any last words?" Marcus asked, pulling out one of those wrongly gleaming blades. "Actually, yes," Lotus said, her hand finding the mark on her neck, the claiming bite that still throbbed with warmth. "My mate's going to be really pissed if you kill me." Marcus laughed. "The Blake boy. He's probably still explaining to the police why his charity gala turned into a bloodbath." That's when she heard it engines, but different from before. Heavier. Familiar in a way that made her wolf perk up. 3 black vans screeched to a stop in the street below, and Caspian Blake stepped out looking like controlled murder in an expensive suit. "Actually," he called up, his voice carrying that alpha command that made even the hunters pause, "I'm already pissed." His security team poured out of the vans, not the ones who'd betrayed him, but new faces, scarred faces, dangerous faces, the kind of wolves who'd seen real fights and won them. 6 stories up, one of them mused loudly. "That's what, 3 seconds of fall time? I bet I could climb it in 2. "Show off," another replied. "I could do it in 1.5. They moved like water up the building's face, some taking fire escapes, others actually climbing the brick with claws they shouldn't be showing in public. "Retreat!" Marcus barked, but it was too late. The roof became a battlefield, wolves versus hunters, both sides trying to keep human form, resulting in a bizarre dance of almost shifts and pulled punches that still shattered concrete when they landed. Caspian appeared beside her, as if he'd teleported, one hand pulling her behind him, while the other caught a hunter's blade between his palms and snapped it in half. "You okay?" he asked, not even breathing hard. "I was handling it," Lotus protested. "By jumping off buildings?" "It was a plan." "A terrible plan," Bustle added from inside her jacket. "I voted against it, strongly." A hunter rushed them. Caspian grabbed him by the throat and tossed him into an air conditioning unit with a clang that probably woke everyone in a 3-block radius. "We need to go," Caspian said. "More are coming." "How many enemies do you have?" Lotus demanded, ducking as another blade whistled overhead. "All of them, apparently." He pulled her toward the edge of the roof. "Trust me? We've known each other for 4 days. We're mates." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer that matters," he said, and jumped, pulling her with him. Lotus screamed. Bustle screamed higher. They landed on a van's roof with a crunch that definitely voided the warranty, then rolled off onto the street. "The food truck!" Bustle shrieked, pointing with one tiny paw. "They're going for midnight bites." Sure enough, 2 hunters were trying to break into her truck, probably to plant tracking devices or bombs or worse. "Oh, hell no," Lotus snarled. "Nobody touches my truck." She ran, Caspian beside her, his team still fighting on the roof. A hunter turned just in time to catch her fist with his face. The other raised a blade, but Caspian's hand caught his wrist and twisted until bones cracked like bubble wrap. "Get in!" Lotus dove into the driver's seat. Keys, Bustle. Where are the spare keys?" "Under the mayo container, but—" "Got them!" She turned the engine over as Caspian jumped into the passenger side. The truck roared to life well, wheezed to life with a sound that suggested immediate mechanical attention was needed. "Can this thing go over 30? Caspian asked. "We're about to find out." She slammed it into reverse, clipping a hunter who didn't dodge fast enough. "Sorry, not sorry." They lurched forward into the night, the truck protesting every gear change. Behind them, hunters scrambled for their vehicles. "Turn left," Caspian ordered. "That's a one-way street." "They won't expect it." "Because it's illegal." "So is attacking werewolves in public," Bustle pointed out. "Legal boundaries have already been crossed." She turned left. Oncoming traffic swerved, horns blaring. Someone yelled something anatomically unlikely. "Where are we going?" Lotus demanded, swerving around a taxi. "I have a safe house," Caspian said. "No," Lotus said. "The sanctuary." "The what?" The place where your mate has been secretly harboring 43 hunteds that you're about to meet, Bustle supplied helpfully. Surprise! Your girlfriend runs an underground werewolf shelter. I'm not his girlfriend, Lotus protested, taking a turn hard enough to send every utensil in the truck airborne. You literally have his bite mark on your neck, Bustle pointed out. That's different, Bustle. Different how? It's Maitzer. She yanked the wheel to avoid a pedestrian who definitely shouldn't have been crossing against the light. Just navigate. How far to your sanctuary? Caspian asked, and something in his voice made her glance over. His face had gone pale, one hand pressed to his side. In the dim streetlight filtering through the windshield, she could see dark liquid seeping between his fingers. Cass! Just a scratch, he said, but his voice was already weaker than moments before. That's not a scratch, that's a... Bustle's nose twitched. Oh no, I smell wolfsbane and silver, and something else, something worse. Lotus pulled over so hard the truck fishtailed. Let me see. Keep driving, Caspian insisted. They're still following. She looked in the mirror's headlights, getting closer, but Caspian's breathing was getting shallower, and the smell of poisoned blood was filling the truck. Hospital, she said, reaching for her phone. No. His hand caught hers, his grip already weaker than it should be. No human hospital, silver poisoning. They can't treat it. The sanctuary's medical equipment is questionable at best, Bustle said, climbing onto the dashboard to get a better look at the wound. We mostly handle broken bones and minor infections, not this. Lotus lifted Caspian's hand from his side. The gash was deep, ugly, and the edges were already turning an ominous green-black that spread like veins under his skin. New poison, Caspian mumbled. Marcus mentioned it, said they'd been developing specifically for alphas. Stay awake, Lotus commanded, slamming the truck back into gear. Bustle, how far? 20 minutes at this speed, but we'll make it in 10. She floored it, the engine screaming in protest. The truck can't, Bustle began. The truck will do what I tell it to do. She took a corner so hard 2 wheels left the ground. Cass, talk to me. Stay conscious. You know, he said, his head lolling against the window, when I imagine meeting my mate's family, this wasn't exactly... Save your energy, Lotus said, but her voice cracked. The mark on her neck throbbed, her wolf howling at the sensation of her mate's strength fading. Should tell you... His words were starting to slur. The hunters. They're not just hunting rogues anymore. They're hunting specific bloodlines. Why? Lotus demanded, running a red light. Behind them, sirens were joining the chase police now. Wonderful. Because... His eyes were trying to close. Some bloodlines can change everything. Like yours. Like mine. What about my bloodline? But he didn't answer. Cass? Caspian. His body went limp, sliding sideways until his head ended up in her lap. She could feel his heartbeat against her leg. Too slow, too irregular. He's going into shock, Bustle said, his usual sarcasm replaced by genuine fear. The poison's moving too fast. At this rate, don't say it. Lotus pressed harder on the accelerator, the speedometer climbing past what the truck's manual claimed was possible. He's not dying. Not now. Not when I just found him. Even mates can't survive everything, Bustle said quietly. Watch me prove you wrong. She took another turn, tires shrieking, the smell of burning rubber mixing with poisoned blood. The sanctuary was still 5 minutes away, but Caspian's breathing was getting shallower with each second. There, Bustle pointed, the blue building. She didn't slow down, didn't honk the signal, just aimed the truck at the loading dock doors and prayed someone was watching the cameras. The doors opened at the last second. Someone was definitely watching. The truck rocketed down the ramp into the underground station, brakes screaming, sparks flying. Medical! Lotus shouted before the truck even stopped. Now! Faces appeared, her rescued wolves, her found family, all wearing flower names and new lives. Old Rose hobbled forward with her medical bag, her eyes widening when she saw who Lotus was dragging from the truck. That's Caspian Blake, someone whispered. the Alpha's son. "He's my mate," Lotus said, her voice breaking as Caspian's weight sagged fully against her. "And he's dying. So unless someone wants to explain to 43 rescued wolves why we let him die in our doorway, help me." They surged forward, lifting him, carrying him toward the medical station that really was questionable at best, but was all they had. As they laid him on the examination table, Caspian's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. His hand found hers, squeezing weakly. "Lotus," he breathed, and she could barely hear him over the chaos of people trying to save his life. "Worth it. You're worth it." Then his eyes rolled back, his hand went limp, and the heart monitor Rose had hastily attached started screaming a warning that made every wolf in the sanctuary freeze. Their alpha, because that's what he was now, their alpha by virtue of being Lotus's mate, was flatlining. "No!" Lotus snarled, her wolf ripping at her control. "No, you don't get to die on me now. Not after calling my food adequate. Not after claiming me in the middle of a crime scene. Not after—" Rose pushed her back. "Let me work. But Lotus, this poison, I've never seen anything like it." Outside, they could hear vehicles arriving. Hunters, police, maybe both. And on the table, her mate lay dying, his heartbeat fading with each second. "Please," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his too cold hand. "Please, don't leave me." The monitor's scream was her only answer. Chapter 6. The monitor's scream cut through Lotus like a silver blade. "No pulse," Rose said, her weathered hands moving with desperate efficiency. "The poison's shutting down his organs. I've never seen anything work this fast." Lotus's wolf clawed at her insides, demanding she do something, anything. The mark on her neck burned like a brand, the incomplete bond crying out as her mate's life faded. "There has to be something," she snarled, gripping the edge of the medical table until her knuckles went white. "Some antidote, some cure." "Solvine," Wheels said suddenly from his modified chair. Everyone turned to stare at him. "My grandmother used to tell stories. Solvine moss grows where wolf blood was spilled in sacred ground. It can neutralize any poison." "Where?" Lotus demanded. "That's the problem." Wheels's face was grim. "The only place within 500 miles is Riddle Creek. Pack territory. The Yara Pack's territory. The Yara Pack, known for shooting first and never asking questions. Their territory was a death sentence for any wolf without permission to enter." "I'll go," Lotus said. "That's suicide," Bustle squeaked from his perch on the medical supplies cabinet. "They patrol every inch of that border, and you smell like Blake now, like their enemy." Another alarm from the monitor. Caspian's heartbeat stuttered, stopped, started again weaker. "He's dying," Rose said quietly. "Maybe an hour, maybe less." Lotus was already moving. "Map. I need a map." "You can't just charge into Yara Pack territory like that," Bustle began. "Watch me." She grabbed the truck keys from her pocket, then remembered the truck was currently dead in their loading bay. "I need a vehicle." "Take mine," Violet said, one of the rescued wolves stepping forward with keys. "It's not pretty, but it runs." "Lotus, this is insane," Bustle protested, scurrying after her. "You'll run into the notorious, venomous, insidious, nasty bunch of Yara wolves before you get within a mile of Riddle Creek." She stopped, looking back at Caspian's too pale face, at the black veins spreading from his wound like poison ivy under his skin. "Then I'll say hello politely when I see them." "Then I'm coming with you," Bustle announced, adjusting his bow tie with grim determination. "Someone needs to ensure you follow proper safety protocols while committing self-destructive suicide." 20 minutes later, Lotus was pushing Violet's ancient car to speeds it had never been designed for. Bustle clutched to the dashboard with his claws, providing navigation and commentary. "Left here! No, your other left! We're gonna die! Why doesn't this vehicle have proper safety restraints for ferrets?" The Yara border was marked by scent and magic, a line in the earth that made her wolf whimper. Crossing it without permission meant death. The law was old, absolute. She crossed it anyway. Multiple heartbeats, Bustle whispered, his nose twitching. "They're already tracking us. 3, no, 4 wolves coming fast." Lotus pulled over at the base of Riddle Creek. The sacred ground was a half-mile up, through thick forest. She could smell the old blood in the earth, the power that made things grow strange here. "Stay with the car," she told Bustle. "Absolutely not. You need someone to witness your heroic death for the memorial service." They ran, up the hillside through undergrowth that caught at their clothes, following the scent of old magic and wolf blood. Behind them, she could hear the Yarra wolves gaining. There, a cluster of silver-white moss growing in the shadow of a massive oak, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Soul vine. She'd never seen it before, but her wolf recognized it instantly. She grabbed handfuls, stuffing them into the bag she'd brought, the moss cold and slightly electric against her skin. "Company!" Bustle shrieked. 4 wolves emerged from the trees, already partially shifted, claws out, teeth bared. The lead one, scarred and massive, growled words through his changed throat. "Trespasser, the penalty is death." "My mate is dying," Lotus said, standing slowly, the moss clutched to her chest. "Please, I just need—" "Pack law is absolute." They lunged. Lotus moved on instinct, dodging the first wolf, but the second caught her shoulder, claws raking through fabric and flesh. She screamed, rolling away, Bustle launching himself at the attacker's face with tiny fury. "Get away from her, you oversized flea bags! I'll give you rabies. I'm not vaccinated." A new scent cut through the blood and fear jasmine and gunpowder, wild and ancient. "Stop!" The voice wasn't loud, but it carried power that made everyone freeze, including Lotus's wolf. A woman stepped from behind the oak tree as if she'd been part of it, hair like spun moonlight, eyes that shifted color in the darkness, wearing clothes that seemed to be made of shadow and starlight. She was beautiful in the way that natural disasters were beautiful, awesome, and terrifying. "She's taking Soulvine for her dying mate," the woman said, and her voice was like wind through graves. "Even pack law bends for that." The Yarra wolves backed away, heads lowered. The scarred one spoke. "Lady Seraphina, we didn't know you were here." Seraphina. The name tickled something in Lotus's memory, but she couldn't place it. "Go," Seraphina told the wolves. "Tell your alpha that old debts are being paid tonight." They fled. Lotus stared at the woman, blood running down her arm from the claw marks. "Thank you. I don't know who you are, but—" "You need to hurry," Seraphina interrupted, her color-shifting eyes fixed on Lotus with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Your mate doesn't have long. I'll escort you to your vehicle." They moved quickly down the hillside, Bustle unusually quiet on Lotus's shoulder. At the car, Seraphina paused. "Drive fast, little Denari," she said softly. "Some poisons kill more than just the body." Lotus's blood went cold. "How do you know what I am?" But Seraphina was already gone, melted into the forest like mist. "That was deeply unsettling," Bustle said after a moment. "She smelled like old magic, older than wolves." "We need to go." Lotus gunned the engine, racing back toward the sanctuary, trying not to think about how much time had passed, how weak Caspian's heartbeat had been. She burst through the sanctuary doors, 43 minutes after she'd left, the soulvine clutched in her bloody hands. "How is he?" Lotus asked, though she could already see the answer in Rose's grim expression. "Hanging in there waiting for you," Rose said, already grabbing the moss. "We've almost lost him twice." "Tell me what to do." Rose was already crushing the soul vine into a paste that glowed silver white. "Your blood. It needs Denarii blood to activate. The bond between you will direct it to him." Lotus didn't hesitate, slicing her palm with a kitchen knife, sterilized. Bustle would be proud letting her blood drip into the mixture. It hissed, turned gold, then deep red like liquid rubies. "Into the wound," Rose directed. Lotus poured the mixture onto the poisoned gash in Caspian's side. The effect was immediate. The black veins retreated like shadows from light, pulling back toward the wound. Caspian's back arched, a scream tearing from his throat even unconscious. "Hold him," Rose commanded. Lotus pressed her hands to his chest, feeling his heart stuttering, fighting. The mark on her neck burned like fire, the bond between them suddenly wide open. She could feel his pain, his wolf, fighting the poison, the moment where he had to choose, let go and rest, or fight in return. "Come back," she whispered against his ear, not caring who saw. "Come back to me, please. I know we barely know each other, but my wolf chose you. I chose you, so you don't get to leave. That's not adequate, Caspian Blake. Fight." For a moment, nothing. Then his wolf surged, clinging to the strength of their connection, their bond, and it fought. Hard. A few moments passed, his eyes flew open, gold and wild, and his hand found hers with desperate strength. "Lotus!" he gasped, and her name on his lips sounded like salvation. The poison pulled out of him in one last violent rush, dissipating into smoke that smelled of wolfsbane and death. His breathing steadied. The monitors stopped their screaming. He was alive. The sanctuary erupted in celebration. 43 rescued souls who'd just watched their protector's mate nearly die, who'd held their breath with her, now cheered and cried and hugged. "You absolute fool," Lotus sobbed against his chest, not caring about dignity. "You beautiful, adequate fool." Still with the adequate? His voice was rough, but she could hear the smile. "I literally took a poisoned blade for you." "That was very dramatic. I'll upgrade you to satisfactory." He laughed, then winced. "Don't make me laugh. Everything hurts." "Good. Remember that next time you decide to fight hunters without backup." Over the next hours, as Rose monitored his recovery, the sanctuary showed its heart. Little Jasmine brought his stuffed wolf, for Caspian for healing. Mrs. Iris hummed lullabies from her corner. The Violet family worked healing magic to speed his recovery. And Caspian saw it all, really saw it. "These are all hunted?" he asked quietly, watching Wheels help distribute the dinner Bustle had somehow prepared while managing his anxiety. "Everyone," Lotus confirmed. "Hidden, hunted, or discarded. We gave them flower names, new identities, a chance to exist without fear." His hand found hers. "This is what my father dreamed of, what the Aurora Foundation was supposed to be before—" He swallowed. "You built what we couldn't." "We built it together. All of us." She squeezed his hand. "Bustle handles the books, don't ask me how. His paws shouldn't be able to use calculators, but he manages. Wheels does our investing. Rose is our healer. Everyone contributes what they can." "And you?" He was looking at her with something that made her wolf purr. "What do you contribute, apart from being the alpha of the hunted?" "Adequate fries, apparently." This time when he laughed, it didn't hurt as much. "Alpha of the hunted. Has a nice ring to it," Bustle chirped. "I'll put it on the record. And you, Adequate Fries Alpha, you'd contribute some financial resources, I assume. You've shed some blood. But blood can be tricky, and at the moment we need practical resources." By evening, Caspian was sitting up, surrounded by the sanctuary pack, because that's what they were, she realized. A pack without a traditional alpha, but a pack nonetheless. They peppered him with questions, tested his boundaries, and slowly, carefully, began to accept him. "He's good for you," Rose murmured to Lotus. "His wolf is strong, but more importantly, it's kind, like yours." "He called my signature dish adequate," Lotus protested weakly. "And you threw him out of your truck for it. I'd say you're well matched." As the night wore on, the celebration grew. Someone had found an old guitar. Jasmine was teaching Bustle a card game that the ferret was definitely cheating at. The Violet family had conjured lights that floated like fireflies. "You know," Wheels said, rolling up to where Lotus and Caspian sat, her head on his shoulder despite her protests about proper recovery positions, "tradition states that mates who've survived a near-death experience should complete their bond properly." "Wheels," Lotus warned. "I'm just saying we have a sacred space here. The old words could be spoken. Make it official." "Yes," Jasmine bounced over. "A mating ceremony, a real one. Can I throw flowers?" "I'll organize the refreshments," Bustle announced, "with proper food safety protocols, obviously." "We're not doing this," Lotus began. Actually, Caspian said quietly, why not? She stared at him. You literally almost died 6 hours ago. Exactly. Life's short, even for wolves. His thumb traced circles on her hand. I knew you were my mate the moment you threw that silver tray at someone's face. Maybe before. Maybe from that first night when you refused my money. That's not romantic. Lotus. He turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made everyone else fade away. I've marked you physically, and you've marked me here. He placed a hand over his heart. In my soul. Why not make it official? Make your family happy. Her wolf was doing backflips. Her human side was listing all the logical reasons this was insane. The wolf won. Fine, she said. But if you call my vows adequate, I'm leaving you at the altar. The sanctuary erupted in preparation. Someone found candles. Bustle insisted on sanitizing everything twice. Rose pulled out an old book of ceremonies that probably predated human civilization. Then a woman stepped out of the shadows by the entrance, and Lotus's blood went cold. Seraphina. But now, in the sanctuary's light, she was even more ethereally beautiful. Her dress seemed to be cut from moonlight itself, her hair a cascade of silver and starlight. Caspian's face went white, then red, then white again. Hello, husband, Seraphina said, her voice like honey over broken glass. Did you miss me? The sanctuary went dead silent. Bustle dropped his sanitizer bottle. It echoed like a gunshot. Chapter 7. Seraphina moved like water poured from crystal, smooth, elegant, inevitable. Each step closer to Caspian sent fresh acid through Lotus's veins, her wolf clawing at her ribs from the inside. The woman was everything Lotus wasn't. Porcelain skin that had never known grease burns from a food truck fryer. Hair that fell in silver waves instead of escaping from a ponytail in frizzy rebellion. Grace that came from breeding, not from dodging health inspectors. Hello, husband. The words hit Lotus like a physical blow. Her vision blurred red at the edges, pulse hammering so hard she could taste copper in her mouth. The pendant against her chest turned ice cold, then burning hot in rapid succession. Say something, she begged silently, watching Caspian's face. Tell her she's lying. Push her away. Anything. But he stood frozen, color draining from his already pale face, the bandages at his side spotted with fresh red. He'd stood too fast, torn something. The silence stretched like pulled taffy, each second another twist of the knife in Lotus's chest. I'm not your husband, Seraphina. His voice came out rough, exhausted. We agreed we wouldn't take part in our parents' business dealings. Seraphina's laugh tinkled like breaking champagne flutes. We were children making promises we couldn't keep. She glided closer, and Lotus caught her scent. Jasmine and money and old magic. But underneath, barely there, fear sweat. Terror carefully masked with designer perfume. But agreements signed in blood don't care about childhood rebellions. She reached up, her fingers trembling so slightly only supernatural eyes would catch it. You remember, don't you, the summer house, teaching me to track in the rain? You were so patient when I kept stopping to rescue wounded birds. You named them all. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Even the robin that bit you. Seraphina rose on her toes, pressing her lips to his cheek soft familiar, claiming. The pendant around Lotus's neck didn't just crack, it exploded. Silver fragments shot outward like shrapnel, one piece slicing across Bustle's tail, making him shriek. The suppression that had kept her wolf leashed for years evaporated in a rush of heat that made the air shimmer. Bustle! The word ripped from her throat, more growl than speech. Her ferret scrambled up her body, tail bleeding, tiny claws pricking through her shirt. Wolf, no! Bad wolf, very bad wolf. We use words, not teeth. Remember civilization? Remember health codes? Remember we're not barbarians? But her wolf was beyond words, beyond civilization. It saw another female touching what belonged to them, saw Caspian not fighting, saw threat and challenge and... We were so young and naive, Seraphina continued, oblivious. though her hands shook harder now. But our feelings were true. So real. Cass, don't you remember? Nobody calls him Cass. The thought came from somewhere deeper than thought. Primal. Absolute. Just me. Your father swore a blood oath. Serafina yanked out a document, parchment so old it looked like it might crumble. You are my sworn husband, Cass. Oh shit, that's definitely not helping, Bustle shrieked, diving into Lotus's pocket. Abort, abort, wolf incoming. Lotus's body moved without her permission, but she didn't shift. The wolf wanted skin-to-skin contact, wanted to mark with human teeth that would scar human flesh, wanted him to see her face when she claimed him. She crossed the space in 2 strides, shoving Serafina aside with enough force to send the woman crashing into medical supplies. Glass shattered. Something expensive broke. Mine. She bit. Not gently like he had at the hotel. Her teeth sank into the junction of his neck and shoulder, deeper than playful, less than lethal. The taste of him flooded her senses, copper and midnight storms and mate, mate, mate. The bond between them, already formed through blood when she'd saved him, exploded into completion. Every emotion he'd ever hidden slammed into her consciousness like a freight train. His loneliness, his exhaustion, his desperate need to be chosen for himself, not his name or power or what he could provide. And underneath it all, golden and warm and absolutely certain, his love for her, not new, not sudden, there since she'd thrown him out of her truck for calling her food adequate. She released him, stepping back to see his eyes. They'd gone full gold, his wolf recognizing what had just happened. Blood trickled down his neck, and she watched him touch it with wonder, not pain. Lotus. You dare? Serafina's shriek cut through the moment. She charged, designer dress tearing as her muscles shifted, claws extending from manicured nails. The collision sent them both into the wall. Plaster cracked. Serafina's claws raked across Lotus's arm, drawing blood that splattered the white floor like abstract art. Lotus grabbed the woman's perfect hair and slammed her head into a cabinet. Prescription bottles rained down like pharmaceutical hail. Stop! Caspian lunged forward, still unsteady. Both of you! They turned on him simultaneously in their fury, both sets of claws catching him Serafina across the chest, Lotus along his ribs. The wounds weren't deep, but on top of poison recovery and previous injuries. His knees buckled. No drama, no stagger. He dropped like a marionette with cut strings, hitting the concrete with a wet sound that would echo in Lotus's nightmares forever. The wolf retreated instantly, horror replacing rage. Cass! She dropped beside him, hands pressing against wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding. I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry. Shallow, but his eyes were already unfocusing, his body shaking slightly. Just shallow. Rose! Rose! The healer was already there, ancient hands steady as she worked. Everyone needs to stop using this boy as a scratching post. He's not a bloody cat tower. Serafina stood frozen, staring at her bloodied claws. Then something shifted in her face, desperation replacing shock. She pulled out the parchment with shaking hands. Look at it, just look! The blood signature at the bottom gleamed fresh as yesterday, Malcolm Blake. 22 years ago, your father owed mine a blood debt. Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her perfect face. This was payment. Even if I don't claim it, the blood oath will kill you. You're the bearer now, Cass. If you don't honor it... She gestured helplessly. The magic will turn your blood to poison. You'll die screaming within a day. Contract died with my father, Caspian managed, though each word clearly cost him. Blood oaths don't die. Serafina's finger traced the glowing words. They pass through bloodlines. You're bound whether you want it or not. Then take him. The words tasted like ground glass. I'll withdraw. Caspian's hand clamped over her mouth with surprising strength. No! His gold eyes burned into hers despite the pain clouding them. Don't you dare. That's not even adequate. She pulled his hand away, noting how cold his fingers were. You saw my wolf. You saw what I become. I saw you claim me. A smile ghosted across his lips. Took you long enough. If there's a way out, I would take it, Serafina said quietly. I have someone I love. This was just desperation. Of course there's a loophole. Everyone turned to stare at Bustle, who'd somehow procured reading glasses and was examining the contract with a jeweler's loupe, his tail wrapped in a tiny bandage. The firstborn of Blake will unite with the Star Weaver pack, lending strength in their time of greatest need. His whiskers twitched with academic pleasure. Unite, not marry. Unite. It means marriage, Serafina said, but doubt crept into her voice. Does it? Bustle stood on his hind legs, gesturing like a tiny professor. Unite could mean alliance, partnership, a strongly worded letter of support. Hell, it could mean a potluck dinner if you squint right. Serafina snatched the parchment, reading frantically. But Father said... Your father assumed. Bustle cleaned his whiskers primly. Also, look at our boy. Recently poisoned, currently bleeding, probably hallucinating. You want a husband or actual help? He paused, dramatically. Caspian Blake, this is where you defend your masculinity. But Caspian's eyes had rolled back, body going completely limp. Not unconscious, something else. Something that made every wolf in the room step back. That's when Lotus felt it, or rather didn't feel it. Her wolf was gone. Not dead, not dormant. She could sense it, impossibly, inside Caspian's fading consciousness, wrapped around his wolf like armor, lending him strength he didn't have. Come back, she whispered, one hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat flutter like a dying bird. Wolf, come back to me, please. A shimmer in the air, her wolf materialized visible to everyone, a silver outline that made Serafina gasp, padding reluctantly from Caspian's still form. Sorry, it seemed to say. Mate needed help. How is this possible? Serafina breathed. Because you're looking at the last Denarii descendant, Rose said quietly, not looking up from her work. Their wolves can walk between souls, share strength, even share life, if needed. Caspian's eyes fluttered open, finding Lotus immediately. The smile that crossed his face made her heart stop. You're my mate now, and you're mine. She kissed him softly, tasting copper and joy. Mine. I hate to interrupt. Serafina's voice had gone strange. But we have a problem. She stood at the window, face pale as paper. The hunters tracked me. They've been following since I left my territory. A tear tracked down her cheek. My pack is down to 10 wolves. I thought if I could claim the Blake resources, she laughed bitterly. I've led them straight to you, to her. They know what she is now. Caspian tried to stand, Lotus supporting him. Serafina, all you had to do was ask. 21 hunters, Bustle announced, ear to the floor. No, 22. And, oh no. What? Lotus demanded. One of them smells like Serafina, family scent. Serafina's face crumbled. Dylan, my brother, they said he died, but if he's with them... The lights cut out. Emergency red lighting kicked in, bathing everything in hellish glow. Through the walls they could hear boots, weapons charging with electrical whines that meant wolf killers' tasers designed to stop their hearts. Then a voice, young and terribly familiar to Serafina. Sister, I know you're in there. Come out. Bring the Denarii girl. Marcus says if you cooperate, he'll let your boyfriend live. You do still have a boyfriend, right? Or did you actually marry the Blake heir? Serafina made a sound like breaking. Sister, you have 30 seconds. Then we start with the old ones. The ferret first. Marcus particularly wants the talking ferret. Says it'll be worth a fortune to the right collector. Bustle went rigid. Collector? Collector? I'm not a collectible. I'm a certified food safety inspector. 20 seconds, sister. Lotus felt her wolf rise, controlled this time. Ready. Around her, 43 rescued souls prepared to defend their sanctuary. Caspian swayed on his feet, but his eyes burned gold with determination. 10 seconds. Wait, Serafina called out, voice breaking. Dylan, it's really you? 5 seconds. Dylan, please. The door exploded inward. But it wasn't Dylan who entered first. It was Marcus Thorne, holding something that made every wolf in the room whimper, a collar that gleamed with wrongness, inscribed with symbols that hurt to perceive. "Hello, little Denari," he said pleasantly. "Your mother wore one just like this, right before we burned her." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Lotus felt her wolf rise, but this time it wasn't rage. It was something older, colder. Something that made Marcus take an involuntary step back. "You killed my mother?" Marcus smiled. "Who do you think gave the order?" Chapter 8. "You killed my mother?" The words scraped from Lotus's throat like broken glass. Every wolf in the sanctuary stopped breathing. Marcus Thorne's scarred face split into that nightmare grin. The collar in his hands pulsed with wrongness that made her teeth ache. "Who do you think gave the order?" He lifted it higher, and the symbols etched in the metal seemed to writhe. "She wore one just like this, screamed for hours before." Lotus moved. Not fast, not aggressive. She simply walked forward with the inevitability of the tide, each step deliberate on the blood-stained concrete. "Lotus, no!" Caspian's fingers grazed her sleeve, missing by heartbeats. She heard him try to stand, heard Rose steady him, heard his frustrated growl. "Child, don't touch it!" Rose's voice cracked with fear. "Lotus, this is categorically inadvisable!" Bustle launched himself from the medical counter onto her shoulder, his tiny claws digging through her shirt. "Abort! Abort! This violates every safety protocol I've ever invented!" She didn't stop. Marcus's eyes glittered with anticipation. "That's it. Come closer. Your mother walked right up to me, too, right before I—" "Give it to me." Her voice came out steady, calm, nothing like the earthquake happening in her chest. "Lotus," Serafina started. "Give it to me." Marcus's grin widened, showing too many teeth. She begged, too. Such pretty words. "Please, she's just a baby. Please, I'll do anything." Right before the collar. Lotus's hand closed around the cursed metal. The world exploded. Not outward-inward. Every nerve ending lit up like she'd grabbed lightning. The collar had been sleeping for 23 years, waiting, hungry, and now it recognized her. The daughter, the one that got away. It tried to leap from her hands to her throat, a living thing seeking its destined home. "Mine!" it whispered. "You were always meant to be mine." But it met something unexpected. "I see your beast." Caspian's voice, rough with pain but unwavering. She couldn't see him, the collar's magic turned her vision white, but she felt him through their bond. "I saw you lose control, saw you hurt me, mark me without permission." A pause, his love flooding through their connection. "I choose you anyway, every feral, impossible inch of you." The collar's hunger stuttered. "We've got this." Bustle pressed against her neck, his rapid heartbeat tapping Morse code against her pulse. "Even if it's monumentally stupid, and will probably require years of therapy, and I haven't updated my will, and we've got this." The metal began to heat in her hands, not burning warming, like it was confused. Behind her she heard movement, slow, determined shuffling. Her name was Iris. The elderly wolf's walker scraped against concrete. "Ran from the East Side pack when they decided I was too old to breed. Lotus found me eating from dumpsters, gave me a new name, a new life. I choose to stand with her." The caller's whispers faltered. "Jasmine!" The child's voice piped up, clear and certain. "Mom said I was born wrong, too weak, but Lotus said I was born perfect, just different perfect." More footsteps, more voices. "Violet, our whole family was cast out when our daughter loved a human. Lotus took us all." "Dahlia, I couldn't shift properly, still can't. Didn't matter to her." "Sage." "Rose." "Lily." One by one they spoke their flower names, the identities Lotus had given them when the world had taken everything else. Each name fell into the space between her and Marcus, like seeds finding soil. The collar began to crack. Not dramatically, a hairline fracture, barely visible, but she felt its confusion. It had been forged to feed on isolation, on despair, on the last gasps of the abandoned. But she wasn't alone. "My mother died surrounded by enemies," Lotus said, and tears ran down her face, but her hands stayed steady. No pack, no mate, no one who knew her favorite song or how she took her coffee or that she was afraid of thunderstorms. The crack widened. But I'm not alone. The collar was properly hot now, fighting her, trying to close around something, anything. "I have Caspian, who saw the worst of me and stayed. Always," he said behind her, and she heard him trying to crawl closer, Serafina helping him. "I have Bustle, who followed me into certain death because someone has to make sure you wash your hands properly before handling food," Bustle interrupted, but his voice was thick. "It's basic hygiene. I'm not crying, you're crying." The hunters had raised their weapons, but something strange was happening. The sanctuary pack was moving, not aggressively, just surrounding them. The elderly with walkers, the young who could barely shift, all of them forming a living circle. Not to attack, to witness. She didn't have them, Lotus continued. The collar was burning now, actually burning, 23 years of suppressed hunger trying to complete its purpose. The unwanted, the discarded, the ones who chose to love anyway. That's when Marcus Thorne did something that stopped the world. He fell to his knees. The sound his knees made hitting concrete echoed like thunder. His scarred face contorted, and for the first time, she saw him. Not the hunter, the boy underneath, the one who'd done something unforgivable and spent 20 years trying to forget. She said, his voice broke completely, "Your mother." As the collar was killing her, she looked right at me, this 20-year-old kid trying to act tough, and she said, "Tell my daughter to love anyway, promise me, tell her to love anyway." The collar shattered. But the pieces didn't fall. They hung suspended in the air, glittering like deadly stars. Then, with horrible inevitability, they began to reform. "No," Marcus breathed. The reformed collar snapped around his own neck. "The willing heart," Rose whispered, her healer's instincts understanding. "Dark magic always claims the willing, and he wants to be punished." "I gave the order." Marcus's voice came out hollow, the collar tightening with each word. "I was 20. Ambitious. Stupid. Wanted to impress the council." The metal began cutting into his skin. Said make an example. Target the Denarii mother. Show them what happens to bloodlines that don't conform. Then stop. Lotus knelt in front of him, their positions reversed. Predator and prey switching places. "Stop what?" Blood trickled from where the collar cut. "Stop punishing yourself." She reached out and touched the collar around his neck. This time, when power flowed, she didn't fight it, didn't break it. Instead, she fed it something else entirely. Forgiveness. Not the word, the feeling. 23 years of carrying her mother's absence, of wondering why, of hating faceless monsters, she let it go, poured it into the cursed metal like water, into poisoned earth. "My mother forgave you," she said. "That's why she said to love anyway. She was telling you, too." The collar dissolved. Not shattered, not broken. It simply ceased, like it had never existed at all. Marcus stared up at her, and the tears cutting through the dirt on his face made him look exactly 20 years old. Lost, broken, human. Around them, hunters were dropping weapons. The sound of metal on concrete rang like bells. "How?" one whispered. "The willingness to let go," Lotus said, loud enough for all to hear, "is the strongest power there is." That's... Dylan, Serafina's brother, fought against his own collar to speak. "That's not what they taught us. They said power was taking, controlling." They lied. Lotus stood, and somehow, despite everything, she found herself smiling. Power is choosing to feed others when you're starving. Power is loving when you've been given every reason to hate. Power is proper sanitation, Bustle announced from her shoulder. "Speaking of which, can someone please address the fact that we've had multiple magical collar dissolutions? The metaphysical residue alone could cause..." The laughter started with Marcus Thorne. Not cruel laughter. The broken, helpless laughter of someone who'd carried something too heavy for too long and finally set it down. It spread like wildfire. Lotus laughed. Caspian laughed. Even Dylan, through his collar's control, made sounds that might have been joy. Your mother, Marcus wheezed between laughs and sobs. She would have loved him. A germaphobic ferret. She would have loved this whole insane place. One by one, hunters began removing their own collars. The ones they'd worn by choice, thinking control meant strength. Each collar that hit the ground dissolved like snow meeting warm earth. "This is insane," one hunter said, but he was crying as he said it. "We came here to hunt the hunted," little Jasmine said, stepping forward with the confidence only children possess. "But we're not hunted anymore. We're family." The child looked at Dylan, at Marcus, at all of them. "And family can grow, right? Like flowers, even in concrete?" "Oh my God, the child's a philosopher," Bustle muttered. "Next they'll be quoting Nietzsche while I'm trying to maintain food safety standards." Marcus stood slowly, looking around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. Former hunters helping elderly wolves to chairs. Dylan and Serafina clinging to each other. Bustle directing cleanup with the intensity of a tiny, furry general. "What now?" Marcus asked, looking lost. "I've spent 20 years hunting. I don't know how to not hate, to not be—" He gestured at himself helplessly. "Learn," Rose said simply, checking his neck where the collar had cut. "We all did. Besides," wheels rolled up, electric wheelchair humming, "we need someone who knows how the council thinks, how they operate. If you really want penance, help us stop them." "I don't deserve—" "Nobody deserves family," Lotus interrupted. "Family is chosen, and we're choosing to offer. What you do with that choice is yours." Marcus looked around the room at the pack he'd come to destroy, now offering him belonging. His scarred face crumpled. He stopped, started again. "I accept." Caspian finally made it to Lotus's side, his arms sliding around her waist, taking most of his weight but pretending he was supporting her. "You beautiful, impossible, absolutely inadequate woman. Still with the inadequate?" But she was smile-crying, the kind that made everything blurry and perfect. Upgraded to transcendent, possibly divine. He pressed his forehead to hers. "You just converted an entire hunter squad with aggressive forgiveness." "Aggressive forgiveness," Bustle mused. "I like it, very metal, very hygienically conscious." A slow clap echoed from the destroyed doorway. Everyone turned. A man stood there in a suit that probably cost more than the sanctuary's yearly budget, but it was his stillness that made every wolf step back. He didn't breathe right, didn't blink enough, like someone had studied how to be human and gotten it slightly wrong. "Beautiful," he said, and his voice was cultured and empty as a drained glass. "Absolutely beautiful. But did you really think Marcus Thorne was in charge?" "Solomon Creed," Marcus breathed, and the fear in his voice made the temperature drop. "Hello, Marcus. Having a change of heart, I see." Solomon's smile involved only his mouth. His eyes stayed flat as a shark's. "The council will be so disappointed." He stepped into the room and everyone instinctively moved closer together. "And what happens when breeding programs succeed?" he said conversationally, like discussing the weather. "Part Denari, part Blake, part Starweaver, well, let's call it other. Your mother was my first successful harvest, Ms. Lotus." The words hit like ice water. Harvest. Like her mother had been wheat. "See, the council doesn't just want to eliminate bloodlines," Solomon continued, straightening his cuffs. "We want to perfect them, combine them, create something better." "Better than what?" Lotus asked. "Than you." He gestured at the room. "All of you. Messy, emotional, unpredictable. We prefer order, control, purity of purpose." "Sounds boring," Bustle announced. "Also unsanitary. Emotional suppression leads to compromised immune systems. It's scientifically proven." Solomon's perfect face twitched the first real reaction. "The talking ferret. Marcus mentioned you. You'll fetch quite a price in certain circles." I'm not for sale, Bustle shrieked. I'm an independent contractor with a very exclusive client base. Every single person in the room pack, former hunters, everyone stepped between Solomon and Lotus. You want our family? Jasmine said, small voice carrying. You'll have to go through all of us. Family. Solomon said it like tasting something spoiled. How quaint, how temporary. The lights flickered. But then, howls. Not from outside, from everywhere. The rescued packs, the lone wolves. Everyone who'd felt Lotus's wave of forgiveness rippling out from the sanctuary. Coming. Solomon's perfect face showed the first crack of uncertainty. Impossible. Different packs don't unite. They can't. They do now, Lotus said quietly. Because the willingness to let go of old hate, that's the strongest power there is. The room filled, then the building, then the street outside. All standing with the denarii who fed others instead of consuming. All choosing love over control. Solomon took a step back, then another. This isn't over, he said. No, Lotus agreed, Caspian solid beside her, their impossible families surrounding them. It's just beginning. Solomon vanished, not walked. Vanished, leaving only the scent of something sterile and wrong. The silence that followed felt like held breath. Then Bustle announced, well, that was dramatic. Now, can we please discuss the fact that we have roughly 200 wolves in a space rated for 50? The fire code violations alone. And the laughter that filled the sanctuary was the sound of choosing joy anyway. The sound of family. The sound of home. Chapter 9. Oh no, you're absolutely right. I completely forgot Malcolm was dead. Let me rewrite the epilogue without him. Epilogue. Epilogue. 6 months later. No. But absolutely not. Cass. Lotus, we are not naming our food truck Adequate Eats. Lotus leaned against the brand new vehicle, custom-built, state-of-the-art, and absolutely ridiculous. Caspian had tried to surprise her with it last week. Chrome everything. Automated systems. A sound system that could allegedly communicate with satellites. She'd made him return it and get something normal. He'd returned with this monstrosity that looked normal on the outside, but had a kitchen that belonged in a Michelin-starred restaurant. It's funny, she insisted, watching him actually polish the service window. Ironic, full circle. It's traumatic. He missed a spot. She didn't tell him. That word haunts my dreams. That word is how we met. We met when you threw me out of your truck. Best decision I ever made. She kissed his cheek, then pointed at the spot he'd missed. You've got a smudge. He growled and started over. 6 months of being mated to a former CEO who'd liquidated his inheritance to fund a food truck empire, and he still acted like the health inspector was coming every 5 minutes. Which, speaking of... Unacceptable! Bustle's shriek echoed from inside the truck. Catastrophically unacceptable! They both rushed to look. The ferret stood on the prep counter, wearing a tiny hairnet and wielding a clipboard that Lotus was pretty sure he'd stolen from an actual health inspector. What now? Caspian asked wearily. The tomatoes. Bustle pointed one dramatic paw at the offending vegetables. They're stored 0.5 degrees above optimal temperature. That's within health code. Health code is the bare minimum. Bustle threw his tiny arms in the air. We are not bare minimum people. We are exceptional people. We are people who need to open in 30 minutes, Lotus interrupted. So unless those tomatoes are actually sentient and planning rebellion... Don't joke about sentient vegetables, Bustle said darkly. I've seen things. That summer squash last week was definitely plotting something. The radio crackled to life, their new communication system that connected all the sanctuary food trucks. Yes, trucks. Plural. What had started as one had become 7, each run by rescued wolves who needed purpose. Lotus, it's Rose. We've got a situation at the downtown location. Lotus grabbed the radio. Define situation. Marcus put salt in the sugar containers. Again? He says it builds character when customers complain. Lotus sighed. Marcus Thorne, former hunter turned food truck employee, was still learning that customer service didn't involve psychological warfare. "I'll handle it," Caspian said, grabbing keys. "I need to check on the new kids anyway." The new kids were Dylan and 3 other former hunters who decided redemption came with a side of fries. They were terrible at customer service, but excellent at keeping the trucks safe from the occasional council scout. "Tell Marcus if he does it again, Bustle's doing his hygiene training," Lotus called. "Cruel and unusual punishment," Caspian said, but he was smiling as he left. 20 minutes later, they were ready to open. Lotus had won the naming battle. The truck's side read "Midnight Bites" in elegant script, but underneath, in smaller letters, "Serving adequate food since always." Caspian pretended to hate it. His wolf preened every time someone asked about it. Their first customer shuffled up, a young wolf, probably recently exiled, skinny and trying to look tough. "What's good?" the kid asked, not meeting their eyes. "Everything," Lotus said gently. "But if you're hungry, really hungry, try the Moonlight Special." "I only have $3. $3 exactly. What a coincidence." The kid looked up sharply, saw her eyes, understood. They served him enough food for 3 meals, carefully packaged so he could save some. As he walked away, clutching the bags, Bustle appeared at the window. "We're going to go bankrupt if you keep feeding strays for free." "We're not going bankrupt," Lotus said. "We have investors." "Dead men can't invest," Bustle pointed out, "unless Caspian's father left a very specific ghost clause in his will." "Margaret Chen invested. The whole Chen family did. Even that annoying cousin who complains about everything. Because you saved her life at the gala. Because she likes our spring rolls." "Those spring rolls are exceptional," Bustle admitted, adjusting his bow tie. Today's was sparkly silver because he felt fancy. "My recipe modifications really elevated them." "You told me to add more salt." "Precisely calibrated salt. There's a difference." The lunch rush hit like it always did, a mix of humans who thought they'd found a hidden gem and wolves who knew exactly what this place was, a sanctuary on wheels. Serafina showed up at noon with her surviving pack members, all of whom had adopted flower names in solidarity. She ordered for everyone, paid double, and slipped Lotus intel about council movements. "Solomon's been quiet," she said quietly. "Too quiet." "Let him come," Lotus said, adding extra bacon to her order. "We've got 7 trucks, 200 allied wolves, and a ferret with military-grade sanitizer." "I heard that," Bustle called. "It's medical grade, military grade is substandard." At 2 o'clock, something extraordinary happened. Not a limousine, not a corporate visitor. Helen arrived. On crutches, still healing from the gala 6 months ago, but walking. She approached the window with a smile that could power the city. "I heard," she said, "that you serve adequate food here." "The most adequate," Lotus said, already preparing Helen's usual. "So adequate, it's almost transcendent." "Transcendent," Helen repeated. "I like that." She pulled out an envelope. "Speaking of transcendent, I have something for you." Inside was a certificate, a business license, and underneath is this. Caspian had returned just in time to see it. "The deed to the old Blake Industries commissary kitchen," Helen said. "I've been managing the estate liquidation. Malcolm left very specific instructions about that property. It's yours, both of yours." Lotus stared at the papers. "But he hated me." "He recorded a video before he died," Helen said softly. "After your father's death, Cass. He said watching you choose love over empire was the first time he'd been proud of you. Really proud. And that anyone who could make his son give up everything must be worth everything." Caspian took the papers with shaking hands, his father, even in death, surprising him. "There's a note," Helen added. Caspian unfolded it, his father's handwriting sharp and precise. "Make it exceptional, not adequate. Exceptional, the world has enough adequate." And below that, smaller, like an afterthought. "Your mother would have loved her." Caspian had to turn away, and Lotus gave him a moment, serving Helen extra everything while he composed himself. "Thank you." he said finally, voice rough. Thank Malcolm, Helen said. He might have been a corporate shark, but he knew love when he finally saw it. As Helen left with enough food to feed 5 people for the office, she claimed, Bustle summed up the situation. So we now own a commercial kitchen that could feed hundreds. Yes, Lotus said. And we have 7 food trucks full of reformed hunters and rescued wolves. Yes. And we're still barely breaking even because you two keep giving away food. Yes. Bustle adjusted his bow tie with great dignity. I'm going to need a bigger clipboard and an assistant, maybe 3 assistants. This empire requires proper sanitation management. The day wound down with its usual chaos. Jasmine, the kid, not the former hunter's brother, showed up for his after-school shift. Bustle trained him on proper hand-washing technique for 40 minutes. Wheels rolled by for his usual order, showing off his new electric wheelchair that an anonymous donor had provided. Caspian was terrible at being anonymous. As the sun set, painting Miami in shades of gold and pink, Lotus leaned against Caspian, watching their city, their pack, their family. Any regrets? He asked. 1. What? We should definitely have named it Adequate Eats. He growled and kissed her, which was obviously her plan all along. Excuse me, Bustle's voice cut through the moment. Public displays of affection in a food preparation area. Health code violation. I'm filing a report. You can't file a report on your own employers, Lotus said. I can and I will. Bustle produced a certificate from thin air. I'm officially certified in food safety, customer relations, and workplace harassment prevention. Since when? Since last Tuesday, online courses. I'm basically a professor now. They were still laughing when the last customer appeared, a young woman, heavily pregnant, looking exhausted. I'm sorry, I know you're closing. We're open, Lotus said immediately. What can we get you? I don't have much money. Tonight's special is buy 1 get 7 free, Caspian said with a straight face. Very exclusive deal. They fed her, of course, packed extra for later. And when she tried to pay with her last crumpled bills, Lotus pressed them back into her hand along with a card. Sanctuary, the woman read. If you need help, any kind of help, call that number. The woman's eyes filled with tears. Why? Because someone once told me, Lotus said, glancing at the photo of her mother they kept by the register, to love anyway. After the woman left, Bustle announced, at this rate, we'll own a commercial kitchen and still be eating instant ramen. Worth it, Lotus and Caspian said in unison. And as they closed up shop, Bustle sanitizing everything twice while singing what might have been ferret opera, Lotus thought about how a spilled coffee, an adequate complaint, and a germaphobic ferret had led to this. A family that chose each other, a love that conquered with forgiveness, a food truck empire built on feeding others, a father's final blessing from beyond. Hey, Caspian said suddenly, want to know a secret? Always. That first night, your fries weren't adequate. I knew it. They were perfect. I was just too exhausted to find better words. 6 months. You've let me believe. He kissed her to stop the outrage, which was obviously his plan all along. In his pocket, Bustle made exaggerated gagging noises. I'm surrounded by idiots, the ferret announced. Lovable, unhygienic, financially irresponsible idiots. And you wouldn't have it any other way, Lotus said. No, Bustle admitted, adjusting his bow tie with dignity. No, I wouldn't. A howl echoed across the city, then another, then dozens. Not alarm, celebration. The nightly check-in of all their rescued packs, all their food truck wolves, all their chosen families saying, We're here, we're safe, we're home. Lotus howled back, then Caspian, then even Bustle attempted something that sounded like a squeaky balloon deflating. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Solomon was still out there. The council still existed. But tonight? Tonight they had a food truck, a ferret, a commercial kitchen, and each other. And that was more than adequate. That was everything. The end. Or is it? Coming soon, Bustle's health code violations, a love story. Bustle insisted on writing his own spin-off. We're all very concerned. And there it is, the moment that changes everything. He called her fries adequate, never knowing his true mate was serving them at 2 a.m. from a food truck. She gave him her actual wolf, walked it right into his dying body. Because that's what Denarii alphas do. They feed everyone, even their own souls. 22 hunters who came to kill stayed to wash dishes. A found family of 43 outcasts who proved forgiveness is the strongest magic. And one ferret who insists proper food safety protocols are what really saved the day. The Food Truck Alpha was written by D.N. Leo, narrated by Jessica Lee. And yes, Bustle fact-checked every food safety violation. There were 17. He has a spreadsheet. If this story made you laugh, ugly cry, and immediately crave loaded fries, smash that like button. It helps other romance lovers find their next obsession. Subscribe and ring the bell, because next week's story has a dragon who runs a coffee shop. I'm not joking. Here's the incredible part. This story was written exclusively for this channel from your requests. You asked for found family that heals your soul? Delivered. Villains who get redeemed instead of killed? Done. A ferret who steals every scene? Bustle is now a legend. This story doesn't exist anywhere else, not on Kindle, not on Audible. It was created specifically for this community. Drop a comment telling DN Leo what you want next. She reads every single one. And your food truck meets wolf billionaire idea literally became this story. Share this with someone who needs to believe in aggressive forgiveness and really good fries. Check the description for how to submit your story idea. Thank you for staying through every adequate joke, every one of Bustle's hygiene rants, and that moment when the villain asked for loaded fries. Your engagement keeps these exclusive stories coming. Until next time, this is DN Leo, reminding you that sometimes the most adequate things, like food truck fries and germaphobic ferrets, lead to the most extraordinary love. Sweet dreams, Pack. And remember, Bustle's watching. He knows you didn't wash your hands before hitting subscribe.